Okay, let's call the meeting to order. You want to do a roll call, please?
Yes. All right, committee member Wall.
Here.
Thank you. Committee member Simon.
Hi, here.
Thank you. Committee member Lang.
Here.
Committee member Burtis is absent. Committee member Alden.
Here.
Vice Chair Lewis.
Here.
And
It's been so long.
Chair Johnson.
Here.
Great.
Okay, should we salute the flag? I
Pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I don't see the name. Classic. It's not normally how this starts.
Okay, Phoebe will open time for public comment regarding non-agenda items. Is there anyone wishing to speak?
I do not see any hands raised on Zoom, and I don't see any emails, public comment at this time.
So this is what this is we start with an opportunity for public to bring anything to our attention that's not on the agenda. We've actually had some really interesting people come in and bring an idea. And then we don't take any action or even discuss it. We just listen. Approval of the meeting minutes. Does anybody have any comments on the meeting minutes from February 21st? Nope. No, hearing none. Do I have a motion for approval?
I will so move. Approve as written.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. Okay, well, on through this. General business. We have a presentation on home electrification without an electrical panel upgrade from Tom Kabat.
Yes, so courtesy of Leslie, we are joined this evening by Tom Kabat to give us a presentation on electrification without upsizing the panel. So Tom is a mechanical engineer with 40 years of experience in utility program design, implementation, and hands-on building science and utility resource planning. Partners with others in electrification design projects for dozens of homes, co-authors guides to electrification, and developed the Watt Diet technique for making electrification of buildings easier without upsizing the electric panel. He's also on the board of sunwork.org, where he helps install heat pump water heaters and solar PV. So welcome, Tom, and take it away.
All right. Well, thanks very much. And thanks for the opportunity to be here to talk with you folks and your meeting. Let me see if I can share my screen. All right. Okay, let's see.
You close mine your way? No, as long as you, okay, then I'm looking your way.
I just can't get my screen positioned right yet. Second.
There we go.
All right. Sorry about the slow start here. Let me clear a couple things off. Okay. Yeah, let's talk about how to advance the slides. That's my
Yeah. Tom, while you're doing that, are you going to set the stage a little bit for us and for the public that might be watching about why this topic?
Okay, yeah, sure, I'll do that. So we're
Thank you.
facing a climate problem, and what we have in California is a lot of dependence on natural gas, which is drilled out of the ground, has a lot of leakage in the drilling process and shipping process, shipping all that fossil fuel to California, where we burn it in a lot of our appliances. We're one of the most gas-intense states of all the 50 states. And in order to decrease our greenhouse gas emissions, we've got a great strategy in California to move off of that fossil gas and move on to our increasingly cleaner electric supply. And there's a lot of very efficient electric devices for getting our needs met, both for thermal comfort, keeping us warm in the winter, cool in the summer, and for hot water, and for cooking and clothes drying, and also mobility with those electric vehicles. So those are the 5 end uses. We call them, those are things we want in life. We want cooking, dry clothes, thermal comfort, hot water, and mobility. And so those end uses can now be met with a more climate-friendly electrification source. But a lot of folks using old methods have seen that, oh, if you want to use the old methods and old devices, you would probably need an electric panel upsizing. At least the electrician tells you you would, and you don't know how to check to see if that's right or wrong. So you go along with the electrician, and that adds, say, $3,000 to $5,000 to the cost of the project and slows things down. So what I've been working on with a number of other folks is developing methods to electrify homes without upsizing the electric panel. So what I'll do is describe those for about 30 minutes, then answer questions. And that's the overview of what I want to do tonight. Is there anything else you'd like to do?
Nope. Let's start there. That sounds great.
All right. So what we've been seeing is that the electric panels that people tell us are full really have a lot of amperage space, or space to flow amps of electricity or power. You know, they're proportionate to each other. And so they can deliver a lot of those 5 energy services I was talking about, mobility and comfort and hot water. They can deliver a lot more than we think. And there's lots of ways of fitting these extra circuit functions into our lives and onto our panels. And appliances have been getting a lot better lately. There have been new ways to make more power efficient appliances. So I talk about how we can find those and buy those and use them. And that, the classic approach we have in our households to trying to overpower problems, it solves imaginary problems on the electric panel, but it creates real ones in our lives and neighborhoods. So we don't really want to do those oversizings. So what I talk about mostly is I'll call either power efficient design or the Watt diet. They both mean the same thing: getting our needs met without picking overpowered equipment. And some of the societal benefits, if more people do that, we'll preserve the workforce for more rapid electrification. And so that's the electricians at the home level and the utility line crews and all the utility planners who back them up. If we can get this done efficiently without as many upsizings, that leaves those 2 workforces available to handle the hard cases. Anyway, the other thing it'll do is leave more kind of panel space in the neighborhood, or it's really space up on the overhead wires and transformers for our neighbors to electrify. Because a lot of people point out you probably can't save the climate alone. We're going to need almost everyone doing the right thing in order to really preserve the climate. Another good thing is it'll help keep electric rates low if we're able to do all this increased electrification on the existing system as much as we can, get as much flow through the existing system as it is. And that generates revenue that helps keep the electric rates low, so the utility doesn't have to raise the rates to get more revenue. Then it starts that virtuous cycle of rate reduction, and as rates are kept from going up, then more people can electrify. And that creates these devices also create this long, steady usage of power across the day instead of short, spiky usages. And these long, steady uses are better for supporting, say, solar power utilization or hydropower plants, things that want to run more hours of the day instead of just a few minutes at a time. So a lot of times, we just face these 3 basic choices right away. Should we make a plan, or should we try to do it right without a plan, or should we just go ahead and do it wrong? This is a slide out of my contractor training, but the problems with trying to electrify without a plan is sometimes those first moves in electrification might block the or paint the client into some corner because they used an oversized car charger or an oversized heating and ventilation system down in the bottom right corner, talking about that. But by right sizing these kinds of things, they can have lots of room left to do the full house electrification. And the problem with doing this without a plan sometimes is the panel is kind of poorly filled. They haven't used the circuits well, and they get set up to upsizing, but sometimes the contractor likes that. They're the ones who can make the money charging the money for upsizing. So it's a bit of a problem. It's like asking my barber if I need a haircut. The answer is always yes. I need to figure out how to get it done myself. So anyway, what we found is electric panels have a lot of unused capacity, and we can design electrification for homes up to about 3,000 square feet in the Bay Area and fit it all on 100 amp panels, leaving room for car charging. And let's see. Anyway, we're working our way along there. Some of the guides I've helped produce, they have this page in it of just showing an example electric panel and how we would electrify a home. This one is without controls, and it's set at about 2,000 square feet and just fitting things on to the electric panel, complying with the electric load calculations in the National Electric Code. Basically, the components of an electrification plan, that comes down to really having an equipment list and a circuit list of what are the circuits the electrician's going to install, and knowing where the equipment's going to be and having a few pictures of those locations where the equipment's going to be. Then this is more my artistic view of how this system works. Is we've got this square representing all the panel space, and then the four corners of the square are the four basic household end uses. Up and starting the upper left, it's for clothes drying. Upper right is water heating. Then bottom right is for space heating and cooling. Bottom left is for cooking. And then the radius you see on there, these different radius extending out from the corners, are the kind of power intensity or electric panel needs for different types of devices meeting the different end use needs. And so the water heater, maybe we'll start there in the upper right. It can be, the water heating need can be met with these new 120 volt plug-in heat pump water heaters, or with the special order 15 amp 240 volt water heaters that use a bit more panel capacity, or the very common 30 amp version that uses the most panel capacity. And you can find models that can do the same amount of water heating depending on the tank size for all three of those radii. So I tend to design things towards the far into the corner, using things like that easy do-it-yourself even version, the 120 volt heat pump water heater. And so by picking those instead of the more power intense ones that extend into this diagram, you're able to leave more space in the middle for that fifth end use, and that's the remaining power available to charge a car. And shown in the diagram as it is, everything's out to the most power intense devices. The radius, look at the big radius, is kind of constrained the center space. And in this little example, maybe there was only room to just plug the car into the wall, but you still get about 11,000 miles a year of charging if you're charging 8 hours a night that way. But as you figure out to do the more power efficient versions of meeting your four end uses, you free up a lot more space to do a whole lot more car charging if that's the thing you want to do. But you can also see you can kind of make trade-offs between the different end uses also. If you let's say really are addicted to electric resistance clothes drying, and so you want to stay with that kind of a thing, and then maybe you see, oh yeah, well maybe I want to go to that neat resilience device. It's a 120 volt combined range, induction range in the bottom left corner. It plugs into any 120 volt circuit that's usually behind the gas cooktop. And then it's got its own onboard battery and it can run even in power outages and still keep doing the cooking. So anyway, there's just a lot of different options. And so I try to present them all in one diagram and show that there's trade-offs and ways to get our needs met.
Tom, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Can you just really quickly tell us the difference between when you talk about voltage and you talk about amperage? Because I'm a novice on this. So 120 volts compares to 30 amps, how?
Okay. The 30 amp devices are 240 volt devices. And so, yeah, I am mixing units on here. Just in the industry, we talk about some of these devices different ways. So I should clear this up a little more. Voltage is kind of the pressure that pushes electric charge along, and amperage is a measure of the flow of electric charge, like the flow in the river versus the pressure pushing the river water along. And then, the amperage is also proportionate to power. Power is the rate of delivering energy, how much energy per unit of time is arriving. So sorry about the mixed units in here, but each of these arcs that's the furthest out towards the middle is the common device available in the market by crusty old contractors. And so you can easily find resistance electric clothes dryers. 30 amp heat pump water heaters are the most common heat pump water heater. Most contractors will oversize the heat pump and put in a resistor strip. That's just their natural inclination because of split incentives. They can make more money doing that, and they think it gives them a safer business because you have more power in case you didn't use a thermostat and you had to make your house catch up with its temperature target. And the fourth one is conventional cooking, that 40 amp range out there to induction. That's the most common size, not the battery unit, which is just coming out as a prototype thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's see. There we go. So this is a little plot of about 1,500 homes, electric panels. The orange rectangles that you can kind of make out across the chart, like here, if you can see my cursor, I'm at the 200 amp level. We're about 800 or 900 of these 200 amp panel houses in the sample. And so they're at the 200 amp size. And then each blue bar, there's 1,500 blue bars in here. Each one is a different house, and their peak electric usage, highest amount they used in any hour for the whole year, is shown in blue. And all the orange space is all the unused space in their electric panel. And so what we see on this kind of graph is there's a whole lot more orange than blue. We tend to use about, the average came out to 34% of the electric panel is what most people are using. So there's still about 2/3 of it available for extra end uses. A different way to look at that is shown in this graph, where it's even more homes. We've got up to 70, well, there's more than 70,000. Anyway, more than 70,000 gas-fired homes shown in the left axis, and more than 6,000 homes shown in the right-hand axis. And what happens here is the blue curve is showing how many kilowatts of power their peak for the year was if they were an all-gas home, and the most common answer was about 6 kilowatts. And then for the all-electric homes, if they had converted to all-electric, the most common answer was 8 kilowatts. So converting these homes to all-electric added 2 or 3 kilowatts to the size of the annual peak load. That's all it added. And a 100 amp electric panel has the ability to deliver 24 kilowatts. So it's even off the chart to the right here. Would be what a 100 amp small electric panel like the one behind me can deliver. And what you can see is everyone in this chart was using less than 100 amps, and a lot of the homes were all electric. This is my favorite chart. I'll call it the comb chart because it's like an old comb with some broken teeth. But what it's showing are the 5 end uses: clothes drying, cooking, water heating, etc. And then several ways to get your needs met with devices in each of the end use. And then the length of the bar across here is the number of watts of power, which is again proportionate to amps. And then I mentioned a 24 kilowatt panel would be a 100 amp panel. Well, 1/3 of that would be at this 8 kilowatt line here. So this shows, just roughly 1/3 of a panel could be taken up by space heating if it's done poorly, and you could leave a lot more space by doing it well. Both of these were 3-ton heat pumps. Just this blue bar here is a lot more efficient than the other blue bar, and it doesn't have the electric resistor strip on it that adds so much power. So power utilization. And then up here at the top are 5 different ways to get your clothes dry. And this one called the combined washer dryer, it just uses no additional peak power because the washer and dryer are the same machine. So it just uses the same power that the washer used, so no extra. And it freed up about $10,000 worth of floor space. So it's another nice thing. Then here's the different cooking options. This is the most power efficient one right now in the market, but the 120 volt battery one is on its way coming to market. Here is the 120 volt heat pump water heater I was mentioning, the little one here, compared to the 30 amp common heat pump water heater. And then here are just 6 sizes of car charger, starting with plugging it into the regular outlet, and then going up to the common 50 amp charger that's good for about 98,000 miles a year of charging if you're only charging 8 hours a day. And most of us drive, well, like my family, we drive 1/10 that much. so we would be fine on this thing down at the bottom. But, if you are wanting 40,000 miles of charging, you can easily get that from a 20 amp circuit. But anyway, so it's just about figuring out how to not oversize some things, figuring out how to buy the more efficient version of other things. And so this is a little more for contractors, but it's kind of the flow chart of how they need to go about thinking about it, about improving the building envelope and ducts so it leaks less heat, and then choosing either ducted or ductless heat pumps. Ductless ones can save even more power because they don't have the power loss of heat being lost through the ductwork. So you can get the same comfort out of a 1/2 ton smaller system by choosing a ductless system. And then doing this right sizing of the heating and ventilation, right sizing the water heater, and right sizing the car charger. Sizing those 3 things right really saves a lot of power. And then choosing high efficiency versions saves some power, as shown in that broken tooth comb chart. And then people can also use some controls. And I've got a couple examples of those I can show you in a moment. Things that have 2 devices share the same circuit, and so they only count the power of the higher one. And other devices that they say pause the car charger so it never counts. Whenever the panel is near its limit, it just pauses the car charger. And then the other high uses, probably cooking, get met, and then the car charger can come back on. I show the contractors a couple of different electric code sections that help them calculate the loads so they can show compliance. One uses a top-down history method. This is just a graph of a home showing every hour of the year is a different blue bar. This is winter across here. Those are probably dinner times where it hits its peak while doing space heating and cooking dinner. And that home hit a peak of 4 kilowatts out of a 24 kilowatt panel. And then this is just a little graph of, okay, how do you use that information to calculate the remaining space available for electrification? They take that graph I showed, they take the highest value on it, they multiply it by 1.25 for extra safety room, and then they subtract that number from the total panel capacity, leaving them all the remaining space they can put new electrification devices into based on the nameplates. So that's why there's pictures of the nameplates.
Wait, can you go back? What was that? History not allowed if
Yeah. If you have solar or batteries or a load control device already, then you can't use this history method to do this type of calculation. You can still do what we call the bottom-up method, which uses the nameplates of all the devices and the square footage of the home to calculate a conservative view of the load.
Mm-hmm.
Would a load control be something like a span panel?
Yes.
Okay.
And, yeah, so if you already have a span panel, you actually probably wouldn't need to do these calculations because the span panel can control each of the loads and just drop it off as the panel got close to its limit. So
for those of us who don't know what a span panel is.
Smart panel.
Yeah, so it's a smart electric sub panel that's able to monitor the loads on each of its branch circuits, and it's already been told a set of instructions. If the load gets up towards its upper limit, to drop first this thing, which is probably the car charger, and then second, drop the water heater reheat, and then third, drop the clothes dryer, and fourth, drop the space heat. And it would say, never drop the cooking, I'm busy cooking. So just because pretty much we want power for the activities we're engaged in, and we don't really need instant power for the things that have storage, like the car charger. It doesn't need instant power because the car doesn't care whether it finished charging 10 minutes later because I was busy cooking for 10 minutes. And same with the water heater. It doesn't care what minute it finishes heating the last gallon of water because it had all the other gallons available for you already. So, all right. Where else can we go?
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out which ones to get into. Okay, there are 7 ways to lower the panel amperage requirements, or to stay on your 100 amp panel or your 200 amp panel, whatever it is, to stay within its power of capability. So the 7 methods are listed there. It's pick high efficiency equipment, pick the power efficient versions of equipment. That's subtly different than high efficiency sometimes. Avoid oversizing. I've been mentioning that a lot. Heat pumps at 2 to 3 tons for most homes in our climate are fine. There's just a tendency for contractors to oversize them for a couple of reasons. Like I mentioned, they make more money oversizing it, and they think it's safer for them if you have more power. The other one is right-sizing your car charger, and then picking multifunction devices. I kind of mentioned that combo washer dryer. It's one machine that washes and dries the clothes. And another combo machine a lot of us have, we call them a range. It's the slide-in device that has an oven and a cooktop right above it, all in one machine, instead of having separate wall ovens. And then I get into the controls things here: circuit sharing devices or circuit pausing devices. And the 7th thing you can do, and you don't have to do this first. Everyone says do it first, but in time order, you can do it whenever you want to do it. It's finally get around to that thing you've been telling yourselves for decades, and that's to do the air sealing and the insulation and the duct sealing. And so to tighten up your building, you can do that, and that also decreases the loads. So those are the 7 basic methods to reduce your panel's amperage requirements and stay on the existing panel. And then people say, what about physical space, breaker spaces in the electric panel? And so there are 11 ways to free up breaker spaces and meet our needs. And so they're listed there in color-coded groups. I don't want to dwell on them too much, but they are there. And some of them are crossover things like using the shared circuit version of the 120 volt heat pump water heater means it doesn't even need its own circuit. So it wouldn't add to the circuit needs. It could go on any circuit you already have. And also multifunction devices like that combo washer dryer I mentioned. And it saves breaker spaces that frees up the old dryer spaces to be used for maybe car charging or something. And then I've told you a lot about planning. It probably sounds pretty complex, but we could break it down to where it could fit on a postcard that you send out to all your community members. And that postcard plan is pretty much just a list of how to stay in those four corners that I showed you in the little art diagram. And so using these 120 volt versions of a couple of these devices, they use very little power on the panel compared to what you would have there now, and right sizing this, this heat pump and getting down to an inverter driven mini split, that would make sense. And then using a 20 amp breaker in order to be able to go 39,000 miles a year, or you could use a smart charger and then you can go 100,000 miles or more a year if you really have a lot of time to drive. Okay, and I think that's my last slide. So if anyone wants me to go to a slide to answer a question, I can go there now, or I'll stop sharing so we can look at each other.
Tom, thank you so much for that. We'll open it up to questions and comments from the committee here. I'm going to start off with one. You didn't mention the implications on panel sizing for when you install solar. As I'm recalling it, I was convinced that I had to do a panel upgrade for my solar.
So let me explain solar and panel sizing. So solar is subject to what we call the 120% rule. And that means a simple interpretation would be a 100 amp panel could have a 20 amp solar feed into it. And then 20 plus 100 is the 120% rule. So your panel can be fed by 100 amps from the utility plus 20 amps from the solar to be 120% of its rating. If let's say the panel was rated for 100 amps, but you couldn't put in a bigger solar size than that. Well, on a 20 amp in-feed breaker, you can put up to 6 kilowatts of solar photovoltaic panels. 6 kilowatts DC is the way they're sold. And then that 6 kilowatts DC gets clipped by the inverter down to, 3.8 kilowatts AC and delivered into the system. So it'd be like, instead of your solar production looking like a hill where it really oversaturates the grid right in the middle where we've got now negative pricing, it would be more of a plateau, a butte. Your solar production would rise in the morning, and on those few really sunny days, it would cut off flat across the top at 3.8 kilowatts and then descend the other side as the sun went down. But so anyway, in order to get a bigger solar system, some people are told they need to upsize their panel. And let me go back a slide or two because let's see.
That's what I was sold.
Yeah. So down in the bottom of this list are two other ways to add solar without upsizing the panel. One's called a line side tap, where you route the solar instead of into the electric panel, you route it into the wires that connect the meter to the electric panel bus bars. And the other one is not to route it there, but to route it into the meter collar. And I'm going to stop sharing for a second so you can see what I mean by the meter collar, where it would go. Meter sockets are tight. So this is my little cardboard meter. But this is the meter socket where the electric supply comes from the utility, goes in here, goes through the meter, glass bulb here and then into the house line over to the house. And so a meter collar would let the solar feed into the side there. And so that's one of the ways to mount oversized solar onto a right-sized panel. And another would be if you could do a line side tap into these two wires here, would be the other method. So they're both available, but under NEM 3 for future customers, there's less inclination to want to oversize. There's less compensation from the rest of us ratepayers to the people who would oversize their solar and have more flowing out than they need.
Hey, who has a question?
I do. Yeah, Tom, thank you. This is interesting. Two questions. One, I saw you had the mini split systems, of which I have one, mainly for air conditioning. It has a heating function, but two things. One, a lot of people don't like having those, things on your wall. And so, I just use it in limited rooms. And the other thing is it's, for heating, it's from the ceiling. So it's it doesn't provide as much heat as, say, something with a duct system. So it's kind of less desirable. Have you found that, or what's your?
Yeah, I have found, it's a matter of personal taste. And since it is new to a lot of us, it takes some getting used to. I've got one of the wall units in my other room, and we've definitely gotten used to it. But what you're describing there is a ductless head unit, and that ductless head unit, the most common place to put them is up high on the wall. But they also make some that mount low on the wall, like a radiator, and would blow its air that way. I'm actually helping one of PG&E's main rate analysts do his home electrification right now, and he's using one of those down low, and then in another room he's got one up high. And so those are the two locations for those things. But you're right, there's also ducted mini splits that go in and just replace the whole furnace, and then they use the existing ductwork to circulate warm air or cold air, depending on the season, to give you what you want. So actually, we should not confuse mini split with ductless. They happen to go together a lot of times, but mini means the outdoor box is not a big yard cube. It's more of a suitcase. That's what mini means. Split means there's an outside thing and an indoor thing. Like the thing could be in our garage, the air handler. So split means it's not all in one box, like a window air conditioner is not split. But a regular air conditioner that you're thinking of might be split already. So the mini and split are taken care of. And then that thing you saw was a ductless head unit. And that's the thing that you've raised two objections to. So you're only objecting to ductlessness.
Okay. And my other question, you mentioned there's a real incentive for the contractors to oversize. Do you have any suggestions as to how to overcome that?
Yeah, it really helps them if we take personal accountability for it, and sign a paper saying, I know I'm signing up for this 3-ton unit, and I've determined the sizing. And one of the ways I help people look at the sizing is look at their last year's highest gas use of any day of the year, the number of therms per day on that day, and figure out how many ton hours of heat that is. That's an easy conversion. And then realize, oh, that was 30 ton hours of heat on the coldest day of the year. So if I have a 2-ton heat pump, it could deliver that much heat in 15 hours. If I'm willing to run it for 15 hours to get that, if I'm that patient about it, think of the coldest day of the year. I actually run my heat pump 24 hours, but anyway, people who think they don't run it 24 hours, if they can get their needs met, and then it's the right size. So somebody would be looking at, oh, I could use for that 30-ton hour day, I could be using a 3-ton unit for 10 hours or a 2-ton unit for 15 hours. Both of those times fit within a day, and they can work out. The only shortcoming of smaller and smaller heat pumps is if you set your temperature real low at night, it's harder for that heat pump, the small one, to rocket up to catch you up to a temperature you want at breakfast time. So it has to start earlier. It's better if it has a smart thermostat or if you don't set it down too low at night. So those are the ways to meet your breakfast time target, is to either use a smart thermostat that starts early or don't set it down too low.
Hey,
So,
Tom,
so in
Tom,
essence,
oh, sorry.
just finish it, you're
Yeah.
saying you think the consumer should have more responsibility.
Well, you have to sign
That-
off and this is enough for me, because otherwise they're gonna want to avoid a callback and avoid dissatisfaction.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, that's, Tom, could you speak a little bit to thermal comfort and ceiling fans and how they weigh into your recommendations? I think I'm remembering that in maybe it's practicing in the Netherlands, the ductless mini split was used with a ceiling fan almost by code, if not by practice.
Yeah, that is interesting. You know, I hadn't thought about it much, but now that you mention it, I since I experiment a lot, I actually do some circulating with a fan to blow cool air up by my mini split, so it has a chance to cool
Right.
that air, or to warm that air. Otherwise, it gets caught in a puddle of warm air at the top of the room. So a ceiling fan can be the way to circulate that warmth away from that and back into the room. And the way we run a ceiling fan in the winter is upward. And then the air goes across the ceiling and gently comes down the walls. As opposed to in the summer, we blow it downward. So it blows across our skin and helps us feel cooler by evaporating our skin.
Any other questions?
I was just gonna make a comment. First off, thank you. This is super informative. To your comments about the resident or the customer's responsibility, I think something you said was really interesting, which is your peak day. I think I'm trying to think back to when I purchased my heat pump and solar and everything else. I think we were looking at the year or the month or this, and really that's the wrong way to look at it. We should be looking at the peak day.
Yeah, that's how typically heating equipment is sized. So, the more drawn out method, we call it a manual J calculation. We measure all the walls and the ceiling and floor area, and we look at the insulation levels, and we do a bunch of calculations about what the heat loss is. We do it all for the peak design condition for the peak day. And we run that through a pretty big synthetic calculation. I'm just saying, we all now, with smart meter data coming from PG&E, we've got the real thing, the real result of how does my family operate in the winter on those cold days. And if I did the heat load calculation and assumed you had your windows closed, but your family likes your windows open, my calculation wouldn't have caught it, but your real gas use will catch it. So that's why I like using the gas use when I can.
Yeah. So I was going to make a comment, so when I worked at PG&E, of course, we had design day for our system. And design day is not necessarily, as you know, just the last 2 or 3 years, but it's designed for what you think the coldest day will be and a given probability. And of course, you don't want to oversize it for that, but you can say 1 in 10 years, and of course, the utility has, I think it's still 1 in 60 or 1 in 90 years. So it's very difficult really for a consumer, you want to be warm on, this huge cold spell comes in. You cannot personally calculate for that day because in the last year or two, that quote design day may not have occurred.
Right. And one of the ways I grapple with that is, remember those hours I was talking about, whether I want the system to be sized so it can meet my needs in 15 hours. Well, there still are 9 more hours of the day. So I could have run it longer to meet a colder day.
I guess then I would struggle with, when I turn my heat on, I don't want to wait 7 hours for it to get warm. I guess I'm just trying to, not to say that would I'm trying to think this through, like, how would it work?
You're looking at it the right way. It is two different dilemmas. One is how small a system can I get by with, and the other is how deep can I set it back at night? And so I have tried to outline that is a problem. If we get down to small systems, they can't climb that fast. So we really can't set them down too low. We end up,
But
if it can only climb, say, 1 degree an hour, then, and my target is 70, then if I'm going to give it a 5-hour head start, I need to not set down below 65.
But then how do you get a consumer to say, gosh, I want to, what we used to call the utility field was an abnormal peak day. I want to design my system so that when this really freak 1 in 20-year cold spell comes, I don't want to be cold.
In my family, we bought a resistance heater for that one thing
There's that.
rather than sizing the
Yes,
whole.
but you said, okay, look at your peak day, but what if it was a warm year last year? What do you,
Right.
Yeah, you don't have long.
yeah,
I think,
Yeah,
I think I
so I
agree with
think-
Tom's track record of mechanical engineers selling equipment is to upsize,
I agree.
yeah,
Yeah, I agree.
and just
But
that's.
still figuring out your peak day is not a trivial thing of just
Yeah.
downloading your smart.
That one,
Yeah.
I think we all want thermal comfort, but that one chart you had that had the two different colors
Yeah.
just proves it beyond any doubt that we have too much equipment for the demand.
I agree. I just think
Much
you have to
amperage.
figure out your.
And the uphill, and just so that it's not lost on people, the ups or the effect on sizing the grid. All these things just
Yeah.
magnify.
It's true. It's true.
So right sizing it is really important.
I agree.
Right. And especially as we all try to transition quickly here to preserve the climate and electrify,
Yeah.
if we do it right, we will fit a lot longer and be able to spread PG&E's workload out. If we do it wrong, we will jam up into a big traffic jam at the pole top. And
Yep.
that's really what I'm advising we look at how to avoid. And we try to figure out how do we make, as each community, how do we make the guidelines and the encouragement for people to explore more power efficient alternatives? And how do we make that available? Do we do group buys for, where people get to team up together to look at it? Because, even in this meeting, I feel like we're getting a sense of how to work together towards solving problems, because I'm hearing a lot of good dilemmas raised. And I think you're raising the right dilemmas and then exploring them together to see, oh yeah, what are the design solutions that'll work for that?
Well, I have another dilemma to throw at you, Tom. So if I'm using this highly efficient appliance that's using less energy, setting aside the heat pump space heating for a moment, let's say it's the washer dryer combo. Is there a reduction in efficiency because of the lower power usage? In other words, if I have a dryer that will dry a normal load in an hour, would it take 2 hours to dry that same load? This is just a hypothetical. Would it take this 2 hours or some?
Yep. Yeah. Sometimes lower power equipment takes longer to get to the same point. For example, my daughter, we got her a heat pump combo washer dryer. It's the new one by GE. She loves it. It takes 2 hours to turn dry, dirty clothes into dry, clean clothes. But you don't have to visit it in the middle. And
Right.
so it takes half as much work, but it takes probably, what is that, a half hour longer than she might have been able to do with 2 machines.
Maybe,
And-
yeah, because the washing time takes 40 minutes to an hour and the drying similarly. So yeah, okay. So in that sense, it is more efficient, but just in terms of, I don't know, a different hypothetical, is there, when you're using that more efficient, lower amperage appliance, is there a apples to apples comparison between the efficiency and the response time? Because I think consumers have enough trouble with doing something new and different and changing behavior. But if we can say, no, it actually is, it's a little different, but you're not going to see a big difference in the way you use that particular appliance. Does that make sense?
Yeah. You raised an interesting thing. It's like, I'm suddenly noticing, except for the water heater, in all the other 4 end uses, there's a difference in the behavior. Like you no longer have to go to the gas station and sniff the fumes in order to get mobility. You can plug it in your house. And so that's a difference in behavior and routine. And the same with maybe the dryer, if you use this dryer I'm talking about. Same with induction cooking. At first you have to watch it a little more carefully because it's so responsive. You can quickly overcook your food if you weren't paying attention to the high performance induction cooking. And then, like we talked a little bit about using a heat pump for thermal comfort, not being able to set it down as low as we could our oversized rocket of a fossil fired furnace. So we learned, just a different way to sail our houses, and to navigate what we're trying to get, which is mobility, thermal comfort, good cleaning, and good cooking, But I thought I'd just show you real quickly. This is an example of a circuit sharing device that plugs into, say, where the dryer was, and then it's got 2 outlets, and it's always got one available for the dryer. And then when the clothes are dry, it senses that the power's down on that side and it allows the car to be charged. So the car, which was plugged in there, kind of waits and takes its turn. And this little device is $190. And so it saves on breaker spaces and the power calculation. And then they've got hardwired versions of it. This one's got a lot of apparatus. This one's got its little current sensors, and it's the hardwired version of that thing I just showed you. Simple like that. But so those are examples of controllers. Oh, and that was actually the pauser with the little sensors. So it would sense the amount of power going to the house. And when it thought the panel was near the set limit, it would then pause the car charger.
And then, are you a big fan of smart panels and the DC bell?
Well, I mean, DC bells, I think of it as a different thing. It's touted to be 2-way car charging, and right. I haven't seen it installed yet. I'm just cheap and trying to figure out cheap solutions. Yeah. And the smart panels are going in at, say, $6,000 installed. And what we find is through good device selection and good design, you can get to the same place for, say, 1,000 or 2,000. So I tend to just highlight that, but let the other guys also sell their solutions. And, so my solutions are more for people who want to get the job done, but want to save money for something else too.
Why don't we see if I want to see if there's any public questions, but were there any other committee questions? Mr. Contractor? No. This is like
to get real simple, Tom, you could just use a double pole, double throw switch, couldn't you?
Yeah, so like a knife switch that would go back and forth. Yeah.
Yeah, when it starts cooking the panel, right? Yeah.
Well, no, what I'm hearing
is to switch from one appliance to the other.
Right.
Just a flow line.
Right. It's not automatic. The human gets involved, right, and throws it over. Yep.
You want to be mindful about what you're doing.
Yep.
I heard one thing, that if you oversize the heat pump for the HVAC, you actually, by increasing the temperature significantly, well, it's better to look at it the other way, which is if you right size it, the heat pump is working more continuously at lower cost, and it's warming up everything in the room. So it's not just the air that's getting heated up and turns off the thermostat. And that's what happens when you have a high heat source, warms up the air, turns off the thermostat, so it's constantly doing the on, off, on,
Right.
off.
Yeah, it
Whereas
cranks
if you right
and
size it,
drifts.
it keeps it more level and you don't have that cycling, and you're warming up everything in the room as well, so it retains heat as you get into the higher demand times after the sun goes down, for example.
Right. And
Just something I heard as well.
yeah, and I believe that too. And then the other thing is that all those warm belongings then radiate heat back and forth with our bodies. You know, our skin, say 90 or 95 degrees, and it's radiating to everything around it. But if you've warmed up everything around it, then you've got a lot of feeling of comfort. So there's also one more benefit, which is a smaller heat pump run as an air conditioner will run longer in the summer and do more humidity control for you. A larger heat pump in the summer, it'll run only a little bit of time and finish its cooling exercise, and it won't do the dehumidification exercise. So you end up with a cool but clammy house. So that's, usually not a problem in our climate, but in other climates, that's one of the hidden problems of oversizing.
One other question, where do batteries fit into this? Well, are they just in this scenario not needed at all, or?
Well, I've not been using this to address resilience, and batteries are typically, there are two reasons to use batteries. One is for environmental reasons, just because you want to move energy around as a good gridizan so that you help soak up all that excess of sunshine during the day into your battery, and you try not to lean on the grid in the dark by using your battery to lean on your battery. Okay, so that's the environmental reason. I haven't found too many people other than me who care. So no, people aren't doing that. They're wanting their battery more for resilience, and a battery. There are different what they call gateway devices that control the battery. And so you want to get a gateway device that controls the battery in a way where the gateway device has its own monitoring clamps. I'm all tangled up here. It's got its own current monitoring clamps up on the wires, and it's looking for the time when it can charge the battery either from solar or the grid without adding to the load on the panel and without pushing the panel towards the top. So then you get it to not count in the panel sizing calculation. But if the battery was uncontrolled, then the code officials will look at it as a load on the panel. And so then it competes with the other things as one more corner in now it's a pentagon, trying to compete with other things for space during the charging mode of the battery.
I want to ask you, did I hear you say be a good gridizan?
Yes.
I love that.
It's one of my made up words. You can probably tell what word it's similar to.
Yeah, I like it.
Good segue into public comment, gridizens. Is there any other questions or comments? Okay, do we have any public online?
Checking for public comment now, if there's any public comment in person.
Our ambassadors fit into our public comment time period.
And then I'm not seeing any hands raised from the public on Zoom.
Very cool. Tom, I got an invite this morning, and I'll extend this to anybody. The DC Bell Company invited me to go to a barbecue tomorrow from 5 to 7 in San Bruno. But I didn't get the notice until today, so I'm not going to go. But if anybody, did you get one of these?
I've been swamped all day. I haven't noticed.
If anybody has interest in going to Cherry Avenue in San Bruno, to the Decibel folks to learn about DC Bell.
Right. And it's an interesting technology because what it does is help connect the car to the house and use the car as the resilience measure for the house, and also for grid assistance or for arbitraging the rates, so that your car works to help take in more juice during the low rate period and then meet your house needs with it during the high rate period. So yeah, that'll be really nice as these appliances and cars are getting smarter, and they'll be able to do more of these things for us automatically. And we won't have to spend too many neurons sailing the house. But
Yeah. Well, is there any other comments?
Well, just on that, for this whole, car charging the house thing, there's a concern by car manufacturers for the warranties for the batteries that, does this DC outfit, does it deal with that at all, or just the technology?
They do, their hardware allows you to do bi-directional charging. But your car has to be
The battery.
able to be bi-directional as well. My Tesla is not a
I
bi-directional.
Right.
think you're,
It wouldn't be.
it's a manufacturer.
It's by manufacturer, so
Right.
the manufacturer would be concerned that the battery's getting used for more than just driving this car around. And therefore, as it degrades, which it will do.
Yeah, my personal feeling, and we got an expert here, but I think that automobile companies are designing their batteries to not fail for a very long time because they have to build consumer confidence. So I think there's some capacity in there that is available to us.
And there are bi-directional cars designed that way.
So
Not
they
all
must
of
have- they
And
must
that's
have
the new,
considered
yes, yeah, no, the newer models from many manufacturers are now bi-directional. But definitely the older models from most of the manufacturers are not bi-directional, and that's where that warranty problem comes in. Yeah,
Okay.
good point.
yeah, back when you could only get an 80 mile per battery range Leaf, you wouldn't want to use it too much for your house because you wouldn't have it in the next day. So, but now that
But
they've got
Ford
all these,
Lightning,
yeah,
but
right.
a Ford Lightning, yeah.
Yeah, that's a week's worth of house power at least. So
Yeah.
these vehicle batteries are very big compared to what we're using, what the house needs. Thinking back to that 2-color chart of where we peaked for the year on each of those homes and how much panel they had. Yeah,
Well,
my
Tom, we're
home, my home peaks at 4 kilowatts, and we're 2 people and 2,200 square feet, and all electric, and a 4 kilowatt peak. So it's kind of.
Well, thank you so much, Tom, for your time. You're
you.
so generous.
Well, thanks. It's great talking with you folks and hearing what you think, and I think you guys have raised some great concerns and have the right ways of looking at it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tom.
Thanks, everyone. Okay,
I'll
bye-bye.
see you soon.
Okay. Phoebe, we're gonna move on to item B, discussion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, so
I
I
have one follow-up question to this. Where do we go from here with this? Do we want to do anything?
Oh,
That's kind of what he's about.
he is a separate topic.
Okay.
Is that a separate topic?
Never mind.
No, I was saying Leslie was questioning B was gonna be this topic, but it's not, so.
No, I mean,
It's a good question. Like, you can educate on right sizing, you can,
yeah. I mean, this is really
Yeah,
good
and we do
information.
have some resources on our website about this right now. They're,
Okay.
probably a little bit buried if people are looking for them. So I think it's a good question about how we can get this information out there better.
how we do it is another thing.
I could talk with, Tom has been doing these sorts of presentations for a long time across a lot of different meetings and organizations and what have you. I think that we can maybe, my team can work maybe with him to make it something that can just, won't necessarily need all of the explanation and might be
Right.
more on the slides that answer our questions so that it's not as technical.
Yeah.
I think that I can work with Tom to kind of boil it down for the general public in a simpler way, and then with, perhaps links to deeper data if
Yeah.
they want it, right?
That would be great,
Yeah.
because you can imagine, like, having purchased things, and I think you were thinking about it too in your solar question, is What question should I ask as a resident or a
Yeah.
consumer that would help me go in the right direction?
Yeah,
So you want a cheat sheet or a.
Yeah.
Right,
yes.
you know,
Yeah,
it's just,
exactly.
What should I be,
Yeah.
what should I be looking for? What should we be
Yeah,
asking
which
for,
is
you know?
the contractor, yeah,
Stuff, yeah.
yeah.
I think as an early adopter, I didn't have any of this understanding. And I have a 200-watt panel, 200-amp panel.
Oh, yeah, mine's, the solar and the heat pump, I'm sure, when I go back and look, so.
If you have a resistance heater, you're gonna be angry.
You're gonna,
Yeah,
well, that's why you have to right size the heat pump water heater.
yeah.
That's right. I had one more opportunity to get
Yeah,
this
you
right.
do it, yeah.
Okay.
Get an 80-gallon.
Yeah, that'd be fabulous.
Great.
Yeah.
So move on. Discussion of idea to develop presentations about heat pump hot water heaters to inform residents and the building community.
that kind of does tie into what we just heard, but the other thing that I think we had in some email exchanges in the last couple of weeks is that the Tech Clean California rebates are done for the year. So that's not a selling point right now, but being able to talk to people about the why and there will be more money coming in the way of incentives and rebates, but we're also waiting for the governor's budget. And we won't really know what that looks like until the end of May. I mean, because that whole process takes months. So yeah, I think that from my perspective, I think it's the why at the moment, like, stay tuned, here's the teaser, it's coming, as opposed to trying to encourage people to do it unless they have to, because there aren't the incentives
For
unless.
the heat pump
Yeah,
adoption?
for
Okay.
for water heaters.
Or for the
Yeah.
water heater.
Is that the only incentive that's available?
No, I
other
think that,
incentives.
Electrify Marin, I think there's money there,
Yeah, so there's also the federal tax credit.
right?
The Electrify Marin rebates are still available, but I believe they're running low.
Yeah,
So I think there still are some.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, but, Tech Clean California had the big pot of money. So, and that will get refilled.
When it refills, does it refill January 1?
It might be on the fiscal calendar, which is July 1.
Oh,
I'm not sure. That's a good question.
Good to know.
Okay, so I brought up this agenda item, like, but anyway, and, just an intro here. So we had talked about having a, public presentation as kind of a follow-up to the postcard or the planned postcard on, electrification of heat pump water heaters. And maybe there's also another thought, just to have a general presentation on the committee and climate action, et cetera. And so Phoebe had suggested that I talk to a fellow, Alex Goodman in Sebastopol, who's on the Climate Action Committee, and they've done presentations. So he was very generous, and we spoke for a while, and I'll get to this. So they have done general presentations, and his take on this is that these general presentations bring in people who already are somewhat knowledgeable about it. Oh, you're kind of preaching to the choir. So he was a little, yeah, you can do it, but there's not a ton of impact. But he said that he even noted that those who are knowledgeable and committed to climate change often don't act. Because he said it's, day-to-day life gets in the way, priorities come first. And so you're sort of, yeah, it's kind of a feel-good thing, but it wouldn't necessarily have been his first priority. And I want to emphasize, I think that may be different than our follow-up to the heat pump water heaters, but just in terms of general presentations, trying to bring people in, he thought maybe it's better to reach those who aren't, climate change activists, like making a general presentation to what you have said, like the Lions Club or the Chamber of Commerce or different people. That may be more productive. But he also said that the Sebastopol Climate Action Committee is now focused on reaching contractors because they think that's really where the rubber meets the road. They're trying to have a workshop that would utilize county resources, and I believe you had mentioned, Amy, that there's someone in the county who, in fact, is doing things we could potentially work with. Having said that, that's kind of a tough nut to crack, trying to figure out getting contractors in here, getting their time, et cetera. But anyway, that's what Sebastopol is trying to do now. And there are, flyers at hardware stores, different ways of reaching them is trying to be considered. Regarding other means of communications, Alex noted that headlines are the key, emphasizing rebates or money. People otherwise don't read it. And they also use their local paper to do things. When I mentioned, that I had been through the EV permits and, looking at it, he said, well, most people have chargers who have EV.
For EV charging permits.
Yeah, and most people have chargers, but they rarely get permits. I mean, just put it in. They are also trying to see if they can get a pilot project on chargers linked to utility poles. I think we mentioned this prior. So that they can get charger access when they're in the driveway, but their town lacks the resources. So it was really interesting to get this information. I guess my take on it was, I still think we should have a public presentation and follow up with the postcard mailings, maybe emphasize its impact on climate change. Space and electrical requirements, maybe kind of drawing this in a little bit, right sizing and available rebates. And, there was a nice little handout, I think you said, Electrify Marin has on heat pump water heaters. I think the key, I know as a homeowner for me would be, the electrical panel requirements, when we can address that, but also the space requirements, where you put it, that's the thing, but really simplify it. But I think it would be, a really good idea to have that at the town hall. And then maybe have someone else construct a communication plan for contractors. That's a real big nut to crack, but maybe that's step 2. Then we, potentially using county resources. Along with the heat pump incentives, an Alex's recommendation was emphasize how we can lessen or help with the paperwork. Because that's what, if you're gonna say the advantages of heat pumps, you're gonna emphasize rebates and paperwork. Contractors hate it, homeowners don't know what to do, and figuring some way we can work on that on both ends. And also, I know I met with Amy Martin on this and figuring out incentives to bring contractors in.
Free food.
Food, whatever it is, I don't, it's just, and there again, we mentioned, some way to alleviate the permits, but then again, a lot of people aren't doing, I don't know, but these are just thoughts in the future, but I think, getting getting a postcard out, getting a follow-up to the postcard, and then the next step might be contractors.
Was it his opinion that people were not pulling permits for heat pump hot water heaters?
Everything, yeah.
Really?
Heat pump water heaters. Well, we saw 15 permits for water heaters in general in a population of, I think the other committee member, 4,000. So you're getting heat pump water heaters, fail every, or water heaters fail every 15 years. So 15 does not represent the amount of water heater replacements that are taking place in
It's
a year.
suspect.
Like by a factor of, 10 or 20.
10 or 20.
Yeah, so that may not, anyway, but we need to be creative. Yeah, so that is the main thing on item B, and then I have an item C. So thoughts or?
Yeah, I think that there are I think you mentioned county resources, and I think that we're talking about contractors. I know that the county does have connections to contractors and the green building, green builders. So
Brian Riggs.
this is not something that we should be borrowing, as opposed to trying to replicate
That's
that.
correct.
And
That was the,
Yeah,
the thought, but maybe having it highlighted in the town that we supported, or please guys, follow up, can you have some ideas? Yeah.
to that point, if the county had resources or workshops that they were already running, could we partner in some way to host here in Corte Madera so that we could try to pull?
Twin cities, let's collaborate with Larkspur and,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, let's go big. I mean.
Who is the man you had mentioned?
I was thinking Brian Reyes.
Brian
Reyes, yeah.
Mark Chabria.
He's the guy.
So that would be one idea, right? Is like, we're not going to create the content, but could we post it in some way and build outreach? But the question then still remains, how do we get them? Maybe it is food, but like, how do we do that in a way? We would have to do our research to figure out like timing and what would be the content that would really pull them in.
I think there might be something that comes out of our public comment period on this topic too. Maybe.
Okay, all right, so there's that, and then, I think what you said, the communication plan is like a next step, like, what does that look like? We have the list. Right, and I think maybe this came up in the last meeting, actually, you guys were talking about a two-tiered approach, and then we have a named contractor list.
Oh, I see.
Right.
Did that come up?
Yeah.
Or did I
Yeah,
dream
we
that?
have a mailing list that we sent the postcard about the reach code workshop that we held too. And I'm not exactly sure if those are just contractors who are registered in Corte Madera or have done work in Corte Madera. I don't think it's comprehensive. I think it's about 60 contractors. But yeah, my thought on this is that, yes, there is a lot going on at the county level and more regionally. So like Bayra and NCE have contractor trainings. And I tend to feel that they're a little bit better suited to reach contractors. But it's certainly something I can discuss with my counterparts there and see if there's any interest in, like you said, partnering and actually physically hosting an event here, although we have to figure out where that would be, but
or we could take a snapshot of their materials and do a mailing to those 80, whatever the list is, not once, but you know, or something. There could be, as you say, a communication plan to that group.
Just trying to, yeah, and right, if it already exists, maybe emphasizing on the website or in some other way.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's a good thought to use our resources to sort of amplify that messaging.
I've got an idea. Can we go to public comment and then we can bring it back? I promise I'll bring it back. Is there anybody with their hand raised?
We do not have any attendees online at this time.
Damn, I thought you had some thought
Shill.
that somebody
You're a
was.
shill.
No, well, we talked about, we talked about this topic with the ambassadors beforehand.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Did you, and, maybe one of you guys could, rewind the tape a little bit on what we talked about. You aren't making a commitment here on anything, but
Regarding,
doing a video?
oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think I told you guys last time when I introduced myself that I run an environmental awareness sort of news segment at my school, and we were talking about with, heat water. Oh my God, I can't.
Water heaters.
Yeah.
Pump water heaters, thank you. That we could do sort of, I don't want to say advertisement, but sort of like a PSA sort of segment that I could. Infomercial, thank you, yeah. That I could talk to my team about and getting that aired on our school's news channel, and then talking to them about letting you guys have the rights to that, to also use that as.
And I think we
Is that
could,
cool?
yeah, it's really cool. And we could partner with the, what is it called? The community, CMCM or MCMC, the Marin Community Cable Media Center, in San Rafael, because they do all of the government, they do the recording for us, they do the recording for all of the other cities, they have a channel, they have a whole studio, and they would, I'm sure, help us and put it out there, not just at Redwood High School, but perhaps more broadly.
Do you have a connection you can share with them?
I do.
I mean, that may make it more complicated than what they're thinking about, or if it simplified it, that it'd be better.
Michael Eisenmenger is the executive director of the Marin County Media Center, MCMC, I got it right that time, and is a friend, and I've worked with him over many years, and he's a great resource. So can either let you do your thing and then share it, or help you do your thing, or do some kind of collaboration. So yeah, I will happily connect you.
It wouldn't be a dull conversation.
No,
So thank you.
it's worth it. It's worth a chat.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You
Sweet.
send me that via email. Okay, thank you.
Do you have enough information, technical information, any more subject matter?
I think I'm good. I think that I have enough
Okay.
to pitch it to my team. It's
Well,
really.
It's like an exploration, is that a fair way to
What
say?
we were talking about earlier is I bet there's heat pump videos out there.
Yes, there
And that there's a lot of learnings from that, but to have it be something generated locally
Yeah,
in Corte Madera
yeah,
by the students.
students would be great.
Simplified.
So
Yeah.
that's, because there's some issues that exist in Corte Madera that may be different in Texas. So,
We've got a bunch of California stuff.
yeah,
Yeah. very good.
so that was the idea.
That's awesome.
So right now, when you do stuff out of your group, where does it go to now? What's the audience you have now?
It's aired like across the school to both the students and the faculty. And then it is posted to YouTube, I think, but beyond that, it's also like, it's linked on our, school website. Beyond that, I don't think it has.
They do some really cool stuff. They're very video savvy.
I'm sure, I'm looking forward to seeing it. Can you get parents engaged in this? Because they're the ones who are gonna have to decide about the water heaters.
Yeah, I think, I can't say whether or not this is sort of an unfortunate thing, but I think a lot of that goes to the students talking to their parents about it. But it's accessible to parents, and I can use the segment to encourage people to have discussions with their families.
For example, if we had that checklist for your amperage.
Yeah, there's stuff.
Just make that available, like, here's what it is,
Mhm,
you know, and, you don't always have to upgrade, pay $2,000 to have your, panel upgrade.
This is
It's a
something,
great channel.
this is something we just talked about
Yeah.
for the first time today.
Literally like
And we were,
20 minutes ago.
and one of the, some of the principles are that we want to have this channel with the students and the student body, but we don't want to make it a huge lift,
Oh, right.
on top of their other school stuff. So we just talked about it today.
Okay.
And there's other resources that we
Let it
can.
percolate, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so, but you see the enthusiasm.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just sent the Marin County Media Center's their website to Phoebe. So I'm like,
Again.
being good here, so you can send it to them.
Okay, but to close out on this one, this topic, do we think,
Well, I think there would be two things. One is, for the postcard, wait till the postcard is done and then think about a follow-up, hopefully at our new town hall.
Yes.
And the second thing, the third thing, I guess, would be for Phoebe to check to see what partnership or promotion we might do with contractors based on county and other efforts. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, and then I would say for the presentation about heat pump water heaters, there's also some additional research to be done there about what that involves, what you would want to structure that
Right.
with, if you want to get guest speakers to come in.
but do you want
So
us to reach out
crossing
to Brian Reyes and Mark, or is that something I think you mentioned you would, I just want
On
to
the
make sure.
contractor topic? Yeah, I'll reach out on the contractor
Okay.
topic, but I thought
Yeah.
the presentation was sort of more focused towards residents.
Well, I would, yeah, I suppose we need to plan for that, but I think first we need to get that postcard, maybe in conjunction, maybe at the same time concurrently, I guess we do that postcard and then how are we going to follow up? Yeah, so I don't know where the postcard construction is at the point in time, and do we need a subcommittee to address the follow-up presentation or?
I see where you're going, which is once we have the postcard and everything, we can make a presentation around it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if that's what people want to do.
Yeah, I think Leslie, you had taken on.
I did say that, didn't I? I'm looking at my notes. You were looking right at me. I'm like, uh-oh, I'm in the crosshairs. Yeah, I will circle back with, who should I circle back with on that? You or?
So I believe I sent you the draft of format that I
Did.
did.
Mhm.
And then your Pat's document summary of sort of the messaging.
Yep, got it.
So yeah, let me know if you need
Yeah.
anything else.
In terms of the presentation itself, the follow-up, my tendency would be to keep it very simple, which would be, a chart on how important this electrification piece of what it is based on the presentation we had a few meetings ago, in the county, what greenhouse gas water heaters, gas water heaters contribute. Then, what space and potential electric requirements it involves. And 3, the rebates that are available and, issues. Just those 3 things. I don't know that we need unless we need someone from the building department or somebody else about the space and electrical requirements. I would tend to just do those 3 things and then open it to questions.
I'm happy to work with you on that if you
Okay,
want. We can put like a straw man together or
Yeah,
just and
yeah.
that way we can bring it back for the next meeting. But that way, if you want to do, there's content there for you to use that I think would come off of what you and Phil and Pat put together, right? We can just use what was in that document or whatever was attached to the packet last time. How about that?
That's our game plan.
Yeah.
I'd like to try to move on to the next
Yeah.
topic.
Okay.
Good?
I just want to clarify, what is it that you want to see? You just listed 3 things that you want to see on the postcard?
That was.
No, okay.
Sorry, that was for the presentation.
Very good. Okay, just
Postcard
wanted
that
to,
your guys
yeah.
already had that
I just
done.
wanted to clarify,
Yeah.
wanted to make sure I wasn't missing that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I think the basic direction sounds great.
I have a question for you. What communications, if any, does Corte Madera, the town, make with contractors right now? Do we do any kind of outreach on any other topic?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Would be a question for our building department, but I would guess that most of the communication they have is sort of over the permit counter.
Right, so they don't have any outreach for anything. We're unaware of mailings or communications with the contractor community out of Corte Madera. That's not something that happens.
I'm not aware of that,
Okay.
except we did for the REACH code workshop, we did send out a
And
postcard.
so that's been one.
Yeah.
But maybe the only one. And how did we do that?
We,
Emails?
no, it was a mailed physical
Or was it
postcard.
to the, and
To the
to
list.
contractors that are registered in Corte Madera? I mean, is that,
I would have to check on
okay.
exactly, it was through the print shop that we work with, they had this list of contractors from Madera.
Okay.
All right.
All right, I just want to know how to do that.
Okay,
Yeah, it's running out of time.
item C is discussion of content for weekly Corte Madera Chronicle articles.
And so I have one more suggestion on that. I guess, I think Martin does a great job in
Grinding it out.
grinding it out, figuring out a topic, but I also want to say that I think a lot of climate change issues are covered by government entities. And I know in my prior job, monitoring what's happening at the CEC, whether it be rulings or studies, which can be summarized in a paragraph or two, are pretty relevant. And then what also is relevant are things that are happening in the county and the cities. And I was wondering, to help Martin out and to, the struggle for what are we going to do every week would be to assign committee members to kind of monitor that. And I'm familiar.
Specific area.
Yeah, like 1%. I'm very familiar with the CEC and wouldn't mind checking in there, once a week, once every 2 weeks. And, for the Chronicles, really all you need is a paragraph summary. But when rulings or studies come out, I think they might be significant. And I'm throwing that out. Again, it's just possibility and just see what people think. And maybe we can even do the lack of time to talk about it next time and see how people ponder it and how could we spread out the work of the Chronicles and also maybe focus a bit more on some things which might grab people's attention and which are impactful.
So thinking about the areas that you deal with or have dealt with professionally, that's a good thing to think. I'm looking at you, Phil. Contractor.
Yeah, yeah.
Anything that comes up in that regard. Sure.
And I follow,
Architects was someone else we came up with would be
Right.
interesting.
Oh,
to-
that's right. Yes, for the contractor slash architect, because architects often are in remodels, et cetera.
They
Yeah.
drive decisions.
Mhm.
Anyway,
I follow legislation, climate legislation, so I have a tracker that we use, so I can.
yeah, it
Toss
doesn't
that
need to
back
be,
in.
just
No, no.
let me know when it happens and I
Yeah.
can.
Right now, everything is kind of in process and there's a whole. They'll take a bill number and the name will stay the same, but everything, literally, it's called gut and amend. They take all the guts out and then it becomes a whole new bill. So it's tracking, there's some really good things that need support, but they're not gonna go to the governor anytime soon, but it's keeping an eye on those things.
But I think if we could, each person take a small piece of this and we're in cities or in the county or whatever it is. Anyway, it's a thought, but maybe we
Think about
think
it.
about it and then discuss it.
Circle back on it in a month.
Yeah,
Yeah, put it on the agenda.
yeah.
I think we can do that. Updates and reports from staff?
Yes, I just have one update for you all, and everyone who's affected should have already gotten an email, but for those that have terms expiring this year on June 30th, that's Dave, Amy, Leslie, and Martin. Just a reminder to let us know whether or not you plan to reapply, and also help us recruit if you will not be reapplying. So, share the post. I think there's an announcement on our website that we're recruiting. Share it with your friends, anyone who you think might be interested, so we get some applications.
Is there any update on when the new town hall is going to be?
I believe May is now the expected move-in date.
Standing by.
So the furniture is arriving in April.
So we might be in there in May.
Oh,
Meetings next week.
yeah.
Well, that's fine. Any, we're getting late, so any committee member updates?
I was in Sacramento all day yesterday for a policy summit, and to cut it short, no one's happy with the CPUC. There's a lot of great technology that we can use now.
Public utility.
But
Regarding what? Exactly.
regarding what?
They're not happy with the CPC regarding,
So many things, but certainly NEM 3.0 is at the top of the list.
Net energy metering.
That came up numerous times.
what are they unhappy about with him?
That it's basically killed 17,000 solar jobs
Yeah.
and just knocked the feet out from under the rooftop solar industry.
That may not be a bad thing, though.
Well,
Dutch, I disagree with that, but anyway, so that was,
Yeah.
with 400 people, that was pretty much the consensus. But it's a self-selecting group. I don't think PG&E was there, but, there's a great deal of technology, that is either ready to go. It's a question of scaling. It's a question of how do we bring community and government and the private sector together? And how do we collaborate? And it's about behavior change. So I won't belabor all of that, but we had several senators, several assembly members, several people from private sector, and some very robust panel discussions. There were sort of, I think, 4 breakout tracks. One was getting off of fossil fuels. Another was the electricity revolution. which we've been talking about a lot today. Another was regenerative agriculture and our farmlands, our parklands, forestry, et cetera. And another one, and last but certainly not least, is indigenous wisdom, as well as really making sure that as we make all of these changes, we're not leaving disadvantaged communities in the dust. So it was a very interesting full day. But since it's 6:05, I'll stop there.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Does anyone have any future agenda items that they want to propose now? And follow up with an agenda request form later? Good. Okay, you can still turn it on later. Maybe is there anything else we have to do?
Is there a deadline for us to give you an answer about whether, I think 4 of us are,
The sooner the better, just to help us understand
Sure.
how strongly we should be recruiting. And I don't know off the top of my head what the deadline is there. Let me just check. The deadline. Should we apply?
I know there's an email that I just couldn't remember off the top of my head. Not a problem. I'll find it.
It's from Lorena, but I don't know if the deadline.
It's April 22nd, Monday,
Okay.
April 22nd is the
Oh.
deadline to reapply.
But I've heard they're gonna pay us twice as much next time. So,
Ooh, lemon in our water?
okay, I'll adjourn for tonight. Thanks, guys.